Mengapa kau bersendiri tanpa siapa yang di sisi? Siapa lain sampai hati biar aku.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is SHALIZA BINTI SABAKI, and I'm gonna tell you about the summary of our assignment. So basically, our title for our group project is how the effectiveness of the Labor Act to protect the female worker from being abused by the sexual harassment. Okay, for the summary of our project is was stated in the Federal Constitution in Malaysia, Article 5, Clause 1, which stated that no person shall be deprived of his life or personal liberty. This shows that everyone have their own right, no matter what. So the Constitution said that the people have their own right, and that is not accepted by the female, since female also the person that have the right also. Okay, and under Employment Act 1955 in provision part stated that right of the female worker aspect such as the prohibition of night work, the prohibition of underground, and provision employed by the minister. Okay, so then it also provide the maternity protection for the female worker, which is the length of or the period of the maternity is at least 60 days, and during the 60 days the female worker guaranteed that they have the payment of their salary. So this shows that the provision is really protecting the female worker. And then last but not least, in section 40, as also in the Employment Act, stated about the protection for the.
In Malaysia, the employment law is governed by Employment Act 1955. This act is enforced by Labour Departments in West Malaysia and also Federal Territory in Labuan.
What is Employment Act 1955? The Employment Act 1955 is the principal legislation that governs the employment practice and employer and employee relationship in Malaysia. Next, the background of Employment Act 1955. During the British administration in Malay states, the Labour Code 1933 was enacted to consolidate all the existing legislation pertaining to labour law. The enactment of Labour Code 1933 had provided a benchmark for the terms and conditions in employment contract. Besides, after independence, the Labour Code 1933 was amended and repealed by Employment Ordinance 1966, which then laid the foundation for the enactment of Employment Act 1955. Furthermore, the Bill of Amendment of the Employment Act 1955 was introduced in 2011 and came into force in 2012. Under the Employment Act 1955, it provides protections and let the employees enjoy the safeguard propounded, such as the overtime payment, limit hours of work, termination benefits, and so on. Subsequently, in Malaysia's employment field, women have been contributed as an important workforce in development of our nations. Thus, the Employment Act 1955 has provided for female employees. So, the pregnancy and maternity rights available to an employee under the Employment Act are maternity leave, maternity allowance, and also protection from dismissal while on maternity leave. It is already stated under Section 37 of the Employment Act that it deals with the right to maternity leave, maternity allowance, and the eligibility period for the entitlement to maternity leave. Next, this section also provides that every single female employee is entitled to paid maternity leave of not fewer than 60 consecutive days for each confinement. So, I will start with the paid maternity leave. So, under this paid maternity leave, the female employees in Peninsular Malaysia in the private sector are guaranteed paid maternity leave for 60 days, while other female employees in public sectors are entitled to 60 days and can get an additional to 30 days paid maternity leave to approval, with an additional option of unpaid leave that total to 1,825 days or 5 years, and lastly for the care or breastfeeding of a child. However, the computation of the 60 days entitlement for paid maternity leave includes any rest days and public holidays that fall within the period. It is stated under Section 59 subsection 1 of the Employment Act that an employee is entitled to a minimum of 1 or more rest days per week, but this provision does not apply during period of employee that is on maternity leave. Next, it is already stated that under Section 60D subsection 1 of the Employment Act that every employee is entitled to a paid holiday on 11 Gazette public holidays or any day that declared as a public holiday. Next, under the maternity allowance, the amount of the maternity allowance that they will get is depend on whether they receive monthly wages or is paid on a daily basis. Besides, the maternity allowance is calculated at the employee's ordinary rate of pay for 1 day or at the rate that the minister have prescribed. The minimum rate of maternity allowance under Employment Act are at RM6 ringgit per day or 120 ringgit per month. However, it is not a special payment for employees' wages because the computation of wages may be lower during maternity leave. Also, the maternity allowance is not for every child born to an employee, but it is limited to 5 or fewer surviving children only. There are 2 amendments were introduced in 1976 and 1984 to limit the payment of maternity allowance to employees with 3 to 5 children later.
Okay, now we move to the concept of the labor legislation in Malaysia to protect them. Okay, since I told earlier about the Federal Constitution, about the Article 5. Okay, so now the sexual harassment under the provision of Employment Act Act 265, which means define the sexual harassment, which is the unwanted conduct of sexual nature, whether verbal, non-verbal, visual, gesture, or physical, or directly at a person, which is offense or humiliating or threat to his well-being, arise out and in the course of his employment, as stated by EEOC, which is the United States Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. They have stated that the sexual harassment is unwanted situation that make the person feel uncomfortable. There is type of sexual harassment, which is the non-verbal and the verbal sexual harassment. So what is the verbal sexual harassment is the how to say typically sexual harassment policy, or more generally is protect ourselves from the sexual harassment. The example of the verbal sexual harassment is make joke that make someone feel uncomfortable in medias, racial, sexist, or homophobic slur name calling, which an inappropriate, conditioning talk and insulting. As we know that recently have uh, the the which is that the Black Lives Matter, and we can see that in the after the incident, it opened all the mind from the people around the world how dangerous this problem could be, since we know that all life is matter. So why the black life is so a matter, and they have been abused in America. So maybe this is kinda of verbal sexual harassment, but not so to for just female employee. So I'm just saying that they also have the racial in the America, and it also not just happened for the female but also for the male, and also they have the skin color. Okay, for the next is the non-verbal. The non-verbal is not like not involving oral or physical contact. It's just like our gesture. For example, is licking lips or teeth, winking or leering, holding or eating food provokingly, lewd gesture, such as hand or signs that denote the sexual activity. Okay, it should be stressed out all this behavior are inappropriate in the workplace. By the physical assault, concern sexual relation, attempt rape or rape, giving massage around neck or shoulder, touching or rubbing oneself sexually around another person. Okay, that's all the concept for the sexual harassment, which is have two types, which is the verbal and the non-verbal.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nur AISHAH BINTI AHMAD FAZLI. So I'm going to present about the arguments for our topics. So for the first arguments, about the employment of women. So why employment of women is important? Because women can help to enhance the economic growth, not only for family but also for the country. So, as a woman, they are facing several problems, such as for the first one, like the woman will face the lack of technical and managerial skills, which is like normally the employers will focusing it to the men, because maybe like the employees tries more on men. And then the second one, low earning. Normally, the women will face the low earning in their salary, because the employers usually will pay more for the men. And then for the third one, limitation access to better job and promotion. This is what the women's facing. Usually the promotions only be given to the men, and this is happening now. This is what we are facing. And for one, employers less invest in nurturing women's skills, because they think that women's only entitled for the low grades of job, maybe. And one of the big reasons made the Employment Act 1955, that provide provisions that need to be followed by the employers, make them think it is hard to follow, and they more focusing to the men rather than the women. So we must break the barriers that prevent women from the workforce. We are not in like the early 20s, we are now in 2020s, which will expecting the Vision 2020s, we expecting the flying cars, we have a lot of skyscrapers, but the problem with employment of women still here. We are still facing the problems about the employment of women. So for the second argument, it's about the maternity protections. Maternity protections is for defending women's right at work, which is a woman will get a day off from their work after they having a baby. So it is important because the mothers and the baby need to spend their time for the mother to breastfeeding the babies and to take care of their babies because the newborn baby really need their mothers because they are still like new in this world and they need their mothers to be close to them. It will these protections allowing new mothers to take paid maternity leave within a period of time. For nowadays, a common maternity leave will be like 90 days. It's based on the company. Like the CIMB, it can be up to 5 months something. So the mothers can have like more time with their babies. So their babies will like get more affections of love. The mothers also can reduce the uneasy feelings. Like the mothers will be very worried about their babies if they need to leave their babies at a very early stage of age. The absence from work allow working mothers to rest and bond with her child as well as establish the breastfeeding routine. This is what I'm talked before, which is the mothers need to breastfeeding their babies because the newborn babies need to be breastfeeding by their mothers. The Ministry of Human Resource already give a guideline, which is every company need to give a maternity leave to the working moms that having a newborn babies. And then for the third arguments, it's about the sexual harassment. Sexual harassment can happen to anyone, anywhere, even from a workplace, even from the learning institutions, public place, or even a worship place. Everyone can be harassed. So based on the total case reported, there is 79% of the harassment issue happen to a woman. But the people that be harassed usually rarely they want to report it to the authority because of embarrassment, feeling no one will do anything about the problem, fear of repercussions, which is like they are worried too much. They are thinking too much about the perceptions of the people.
Effect of sexual harassment at work. If the harasser is among the authority, which is among the employer, the victims will choose to keep quiet as they cannot bear to lose their job. Seeking for a job nowadays is not as simple as all this. This is because the job vacancy is lesser than the job seeker itself. Other than that, if the harasser is among the co-worker, the condition will become hostile and unpleasant, while at the same time, the victims getting indirect pressure in leaving her job. This will cause the working environment become uncomfortable and the productivity of the victims will be. For example, if there are grouping work, the harasser will actively sexually harass the victims, which make the victims feel pressure and wanting to quit her job. Besides, getting sexually harassed will surely affect the victim herself, where she will feel trauma and suffer serious emotional and physical consequences. Getting emotional disturbed is a serious case as it will cause to serious illnesses such as mental illness.